Elon Musk paused mid-stride, his sharp eyes locking onto the worn face of a homeless man seated on the cold pavement. The man held a cardboard sign scrawled with shaky letters, "Just $5 for food." Elon tilted his head slightly, curiosity sparking in his mind. For a moment, the world around them, the bustling crowd, the blaring car horns, faded. "Hey," Elon said, his voice calm but firm. "Why $5? Why not 10 or 20? The man, startled by the unexpected question, glanced up. His face was gaunt, his eyes weary, but there was a flicker of dignity in his expression. "Because 5 is enough," he replied, his voice hoarse yet steady. "Enough for a warm sandwich, maybe a coffee, just enough to keep going." Elon crouched down, his designer sneakers inches away from the man's battered boots. "What's your name?" he asked. "Charlie," the man replied, unsure why this stranger cared. "Charlie Bennett." Elon studied him for a moment, his gaze piercing but not unkind. "All right, Charlie, come with me." Charlie froze. He had asked for $5, not a life-altering encounter. Was this man mocking him? Was it some cruel prank? But something about Elon's demeanor, his calm confidence, the way he waited patiently, compelled Charlie to stand. His legs wobbled slightly, unused to long walks, but he followed Elon through the crowd, unsure of what lay ahead. Inside a small diner down the street, Elon slid into a booth and motioned for Charlie to sit across from him. Charlie hesitated, the warmth of the place almost overwhelming after months of cold streets. As the waitress poured water, Elon gestured toward the menu. "Order whatever you want. My treat." Charlie picked up the menu with trembling hands, glancing nervously at the prices. He couldn't bring himself to choose anything too expensive. "Just a sandwich is fine." Elon raised an eyebrow. "You're playing it safe, huh? All right, one sandwich for you and the special for me. And 2 coffees, please," he said to the waitress, who nodded and disappeared. As they waited, Elon leaned forward, his expression serious. "Charlie, I don't believe in coincidences. You asked for $5, but maybe what you really need is a chance. Tell me, how did you end up here?" Charlie hesitated, his throat tightening. No one had asked him that in years. No one had cared. I had a life once," he began, his voice breaking. "A job, a family, everything. But then it all fell apart. Layoffs, medical bills. My wife, she couldn't take it, left me, and now here I am." Elon nodded, his gaze never wavering. "So, if you had a chance to start over, just one shot, would you take it?" Charlie's eyes filled with tears. He clenched his fists under the table, his voice a whisper. "I don't know if I'd succeed, but yes, I'd try." Elon smiled faintly, his next words both a challenge and a promise. "Good, because I'm about to give you more than $5, but it's up to you what you do with it." Charlie's stomach churned, not from hunger, but from nerves, as he trailed behind Elon Musk into the diner. The neon sign buzzed faintly overhead, casting a bluish glow on the cracked pavement. Inside, the warmth hit him like a wave, a stark contrast to the biting cold outside. Elon walked with the ease of someone who belonged, while Charlie shuffled awkwardly, conscious of his tattered coat and unkempt appearance. "Here," Elon said, gesturing toward a booth by the window. Charlie hesitated. The vinyl seat looked too pristine for someone like him. Seeing his hesitation, Elon slid into the opposite side and motioned again. "Sit, you'll be fine." Reluctantly, Charlie lowered himself onto the seat, his rough hands fidgeting on the table. The waitress approached with a practiced smile, her pen poised. "What can I get for you two?" Elon didn't even glance at the menu. "We'll have the special, and a sandwich for him. 2 coffees, black." He glanced at Charlie, his tone casual but commanding. "Sound good?" Charlie nodded, barely finding his voice. Yeah, thanks." As the waitress left, silence hung between them like a thick fog. Charlie's eyes darted around the diner, avoiding Elon's gaze. The clinking of cutlery and muffled conversations from nearby tables only made the moment feel heavier. Elon leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Charlie, tell me something. How does someone like you end up out there asking for $5? Charlie stiffened, his instinct to retreat. "Someone like me?" he repeated, his tone defensive. "I don't mean to offend," Elon said, his voice steady, "but you don't seem like you belong on the streets. What happened?" Charlie swallowed hard, the lump in his throat almost unbearable. "Life happened," he said bitterly. "I had a job, a family, but it all slipped away." Elon didn't interrupt, his sharp gaze urging Charlie to continue. "I worked in construction," Charlie began, his voice trembling. "Good pay, long hours, but I didn't mind. My wife Susan and I had a little house. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. His lips quivered, memories clawing at his resolve. Then I got hurt on the job, back injury. Doctor said I'd be fine, but the pain never really left. Lost my job. Bills piled up. Susan tried to hold on, but he stopped, his eyes glistening. She left. Couldn't take the stress. The waitress returned, sliding plates of steaming food onto the table. Charlie stared at the sandwich, his appetite replaced by shame. And now, he whispered, I'm just here. Elon sipped his coffee, his expression unreadable. Do you regret anything? Charlie let out a hollow laugh. What's the point? Regret doesn't fix anything. Elon leaned back, his casual demeanor suddenly replaced with intensity. Maybe not. But what if you had a second chance? What would you do with it? Charlie blinked, stunned. I don't know, he stammered. Elon smiled faintly, the corners of his eyes crinkling. Think about it, he said, his voice low but resolute. Because a second chance is exactly what I'm offering. Charlie stared at him, the words hanging in the air like a lifeline he wasn't sure he deserved. Elon Musk leaned back in his seat, his piercing gaze fixed on Charlie. You've had a tough run, he began, his voice calm but deliberate. But here's the thing. What happens next is entirely up to you. Charlie stared at him, confused. What do you mean? Elon's lips curved into a faint smile. I mean, I'll give you more than $5, Charlie. But there's a catch. Charlie's heart skipped a beat. He had expected a handout, maybe a few kind words before being sent back to the streets. This was something else. A catch? He echoed, his voice wary. Elon leaned forward, folding his hands on the table. I'll rent you a small apartment, cover your basics for a month. But in return, you take on a challenge, a chance to rebuild your life. No strings, just your effort. Can you do that? Charlie's hands trembled slightly as he gripped the edge of the table. A mix of emotions swirled inside him. Hope, fear, doubt. Why me? He blurted out, his voice cracking. Why would you do this for someone like me? Elon's expression softened, but his tone remained firm. Because everyone deserves a second chance, Charlie. And I believe in taking risks. You just happen to be one worth taking. The words hit Charlie like a jolt, both humbling and terrifying. He shook his head, disbelief clouding his thoughts. What if I mess up? What if I can't do it? Then you'll fail, Elon said bluntly. But at least you'll know you tried. That's better than sitting here, hoping for $5 that won't change anything. The truth of those words struck deep, cutting through the layers of doubt Charlie had carried for years. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. I don't know, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Elon reached across the table, his hand outstretched. Then decide, right here, right now. Do you want to stay in this cycle or do you want to take a chance on yourself? Charlie's eyes filled with tears, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. For so long he had felt invisible, forgotten by a world that moved too fast to notice people like him. And now, sitting across from one of the most powerful men in the world, he was being offered something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. With a shaky breath, he reached out and grasped Elon's hand. Okay, he said, his voice trembling. I'll try. Elon's smile widened, not with pity, but with approval. Good, he said simply. Then let's get started. Charlie didn't know what lay ahead, but as Elon's firm grip released his, he felt something stir deep inside him, a tiny spark of belief. It wasn't much, but it was enough to take the first step into the unknown. Elon Musk handed Charlie a small envelope. The keys to your new place, Elon said with a nod. You'll find some basics inside, clothes, food, and a phone. There's only one condition. Document everything. I want to see your journey. Charlie's fingers trembled as he accepted the envelope. It felt heavier than it should, not because of its weight, but because of what it represented. Responsibility, hope, and pressure all rolled into one. I don't know if I can do this, Charlie murmured, his voice barely audible. Elon's gaze remained steady. Don't think. Just act. You've taken the first step and that's always the hardest. Now keep moving. With that, he turned and left, leaving Charlie standing alone, clutching the envelope like a lifeline. The apartment was small and modest, but to Charlie it felt like a palace. The walls were bare, the furniture sparse, a bed, a table, a single chair, but it was clean. It smelled of fresh paint and possibilities. He ran his hand over the countertop, marveling at how long it had been since he had touched something that was truly his. Yet, as the initial thrill faded, a creeping sense of inadequacy filled the space. The quiet was too loud. The walls felt like they were closing in, Charlie had spent months in the open air under the stars, where the only constant was chaos. Here, the stillness was suffocating. The phone on the table buzzed, jolting him. He picked it up to see a video message from Elon. In the video, Elon's voice was calm but firm. Don't quit now. The hardest part of rebuilding is convincing yourself you're worth it. And you are. Prove it to yourself, not me. Charlie replayed the message twice, each time feeling a strange mix of frustration and determination. He didn't want to fail, especially not in front of Elon. The next day, Charlie ventured out, wearing the clean clothes Elon had provided. He walked into a grocery store, clutching a hastily written resume, a single sheet of paper that felt like it held his entire future. "Are you hiring?" he asked the manager, his voice shaky. The manager gave him a once-over, her expression unreadable. "We need a stalker for the night shift. Can you handle that?" "Yes," Charlie said quickly, though doubt gnawed at him. The work was grueling. Hours spent lifting heavy boxes, organizing shelves, and enduring the quiet judgment of coworkers who whispered behind his back. Charlie heard snippets. Where'd they find him? And felt the One night after a particularly exhausting, Charlie sat on his bed and stared at his hands hovered over the camera app. Document everything, had said. Deep breath, he recorded him. "This is harder than I thought." Voice raw. "But I'm trying. I'm not giving up." He sent the video, not knowing if Elon would even watch it, but he hoped in some small way to remind him. Elon Musk's name lit up on Charlie's phone screen as he walked home from his shift. "How's the progress?" Elon's voice came through, steady, calm, yet expectant. Charlie wiped the sweat off his brow, balancing the grocery. "I'm trying," his voice laced with, "I've been saving and made some connections at work, but it's slow, painfully." "Good," Elon replied. "Slow progress is still progress. Don't forget that." The call ended as abruptly as it began, leaving Charlie standing in the quiet street, feeling oddly reassured and yet burdened with the weight of expectation. Charlie had started tucking away small amounts of his paycheck, $10 here, $20 there. It wasn't much, but watching the crumpled bills stack up in the old coffee tin under his bed gave him a sense of control he hadn't felt in years. He even began chatting with co-workers during breaks, carefully bridging the gap between his guarded past and the new life he was trying to build. But it wasn't easy. One afternoon, while stocking shelves, Charlie froze as a familiar voice called his name. Turning slowly, he saw Mark, an old friend from his past life, back when he had a job, a home, and a family. "Charlie, is that you?" Mark's tone was a mix of surprise and pity. Charlie forced a smile, his stomach twisting. "Yeah, it's me. Just working here now." Mark studied him, his expression awkward. "Man, it's been years. What happened to you? Last I heard you were doing great." The question cut deep. Charlie felt the shame rising, but he refused to let it show. "Life happened," he said flatly, then turned back to the shelf he was organizing. Mark hesitated, then placed a hand on Charlie's shoulder. "If you ever need anything, let me know." His tone was kind, but the pity in his eyes stung worse than any insult. And that night, Charlie lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The encounter with Mark replayed in his mind, each word a fresh wound. For a moment, he felt the old hopelessness creeping back, whispering that maybe this was all for nothing. But the next morning, Charlie surprised himself. Instead of sinking into despair, he channeled his emotions into action. He picked up a second job as a delivery driver, determined to push harder. Every dollar he earned, every hour he worked, became a small act of defiance against his past. Just as things seemed to be improving, another setback hit. Charlie's bike, his only means of transport for deliveries, was stolen from outside his apartment. When he saw the empty rack, his heart sank, and for a moment he felt like giving up. He sat on the curb, his head in his hands, fighting back tears. The progress he had made felt fragile, as if it could crumble at any moment. That evening, as he sat defeated in his tiny apartment, there was a knock at the door. When he opened it, Elon Musk stood there, his expression unreadable. Elon crossed his arms, his eyes sharp. "Well, Charlie, do you want to fight or fold?" The words hung in the air, heavy with challenge and possibility. Elon Musk's voice echoed in Charlie's mind as he handed the cashier a bundle of carefully saved bills. "Keep moving forward," Elon had said, his tone calm but firm. The old bike Charlie was purchasing wasn't much. A few scratches, a wobbly wheel, but it was enough to get him back on the road. "This'll do," Charlie muttered to himself, gripping the handlebars tightly as he left the shop. The ride home was shaky, the chain squeaking with every turn of the pedals, but the sound filled him with a strange kind of joy. It wasn't just a bike, it was another step toward reclaiming his life. And the double shifts were grueling, but Charlie found himself smiling more often. Deliveries during the day, stocking shelves at night. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. One evening, As he unwrapped a sandwich during his break, a thought struck him. He remembered the nights he'd spent hungry, sitting on cold sidewalks, wondering if anyone would notice his pain. Now he had enough to eat and enough to share. The idea simmered in his mind. A small food cart, serving simple, affordable meals to those who needed them most. It was a wild dream, one he couldn't afford yet, but it gave him something new: hope. Weeks passed, and the tin under Charlie's bed grew heavier with coins and bills. He began sketching ideas for his cart on the back of delivery receipts during his breaks. One night, he recorded a video for Elon. "This might sound crazy," he said, holding up his rough sketches, "but I want to start something of my own. A food cart, not just to make money, but to give back, to feed people the way I wish someone had fed me when I was out there." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "I know it's a long shot, but I've got to try. I've come too far to stop now." He sent the video, not expecting a reply. But the next morning, his phone buzzed. Elon's response was short but powerful. "Meet me tomorrow. We need to talk." When Charlie arrived at the cafe the next day, Elon was already there, sipping coffee. He slid an envelope across the table, his expression unreadable. "What's this?" Charlie asked, his hands trembling. "Open it," Elon said simply. Inside was a grant document, a substantial sum of money designated to help Charlie start his food cart. Charlie's breath caught. I don't understand," he stammered, tears welling in his eyes. Elon leaned back, a faint smile on his lips. "When you asked me for $5, I didn't just see your need, Charlie. I saw your potential. Now it's time for you to see it too." Charlie's cart became more than a business. It became a symbol of resilience. Locals lined up for his hearty sandwiches and warm smiles, praising his generosity and kind spirit. Each day, Charlie greeted customers with the same thought: how far he'd come since that fateful night. One evening, as he closed up, he held the crumpled sign he'd kept all this time. "Just $5 for food," he whispered to himself. "It all started with this." Elon Musk stood quietly at the back of the line, his presence almost unnoticeable amidst the bustling crowd. The aroma of sizzling food filled the air as customers chatted and laughed, their hands full of hearty sandwiches and steaming cups of soup. At the front of the food cart, Charlie was busy, his face glowing with energy and pride. "Next!" Charlie called out, his voice confident and warm. He looked up, ready to take the next order, and froze. There he was, Elon Musk, smiling faintly, his hands tucked casually into his jacket pockets. For a moment, the world seemed to blur, and Charlie's heart raced. The man who had given him everything was now standing in front of him, like any other customer. Charlie swallowed hard, his voice cracking slightly as he said, "Elon, I didn't expect to see you here." Elon stepped forward, his smile widening. "I was in the area. Thought I'd see how things were going." He glanced around, taking in the line of customers and the hum of activity. "Looks like you've been busy." Charlie nodded, his throat tightening. "Yeah, it's been a ride. Hard work, long hours, but I love it." As Charlie prepared Elon's order, he thought back to where it all started. The cold pavement, the crumpled sign, the question that had changed his life. Why $5? Now he had something he'd never dared to dream of: a thriving business and a purpose. When Elon's plate was ready, Charlie handed it to him with a firm grip. "This one's on the house," he said, his voice thick with gratitude. Elon raised an eyebrow, his lips quirking into a teasing smirk. "Careful, that's not a sustainable business model." Charlie chuckled, his laugh carrying a depth of joy that felt new. "Maybe not, but for you I'll make an exception." And the two men sat at a small table near the cart, the noise of the city fading into the background. Customers continued to come and go, many of them nodding or waving to Charlie with familiarity. Elon took a bite of the sandwich, nodding appreciatively. "This is good," he said simply, then turned his gaze to Charlie. "Are you happy now?" Charlie paused, the question catching him off guard. For a long moment he didn't speak, his mind racing through the journey that had brought him here, the struggles, the setbacks, the victories. Finally he smiled, his eyes glistening. "Happier than I ever imagined," he said softly. "Not just because of the business, but because I feel like I matter again, like I have a place in this world." As the evening wound down and the last customer walked away, Charlie pulled out the tattered cardboard sign he had kept all this time. He held it in his hands, the faded words staring back at him. "Just $5 for food." He looked up at Elon, his voice barely above a whisper. "It all started with this." Elon smiled, a rare softness in his expression. "No, Charlie, it started with you." Charlie stood there for a moment, watching as Elon walked away, blending into the city lights. And for the first time in years, Charlie felt not just hope, but a profound sense of peace. Charlie's story is a powerful reminder that a single act of courage, combined with the belief of someone who sees your potential, can transform a life. If this story moved you, take a moment to reflect. Who in your life might need a second chance? How can you be the spark that ignites their transformation? Let this be the day you extend a hand, whether it's through a kind word, a small gesture, or simply believing in someone who's lost hope. Because sometimes, it's not just about the $5, it's about seeing the value in people when they can't see it themselves. If this story inspired you, share it with someone who needs hope or motivation today. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us of the incredible potential in all of us. Together, we can create ripples that change the world.